They didn't yell at first, and that's the part people always find hard to believe because when you imagine something going wrong with police on a plane, you picture chaos right away. Raised voices, hands on guns, everyone panicking. But no, it started quietly, almost politely, like the kind of moment you don't realize is about to change your life, until it already has. An airport police officer stood next to our row, leaned in just enough for me to hear him, and said, "Sir, I need you and your family to come with me right now." 3 sentences into this story, and yeah, that really happened. We were already seated on Flight 882 Clearwater to Denver Sunday afternoon, the kind of flight where people are relaxed, half asleep, already thinking about where they're going to eat when they land. My wife Talia was pushing our carry-on into the overhead bin, my daughter Kayla was buckled in by the window, and my son Noah was struggling with his seatbelt, which is what I was helping him with when I looked up and saw the uniform. Badge, radio. That look you learn to recognize if you've lived long enough in certain skin. I remember blinking, actually blinking like maybe I misheard him. "I'm sorry," I said, "is there a problem?" He didn't answer that. He just repeated himself a little firmer this time. "Stand up and bring your belongings." Talia froze with her arms still raised, backpack halfway in the bin. Kayla stopped moving completely like she was trying to disappear. Noah looked up at me and said, "Dad," in that small voice that hits you right in the chest. I asked the obvious question, the one any normal person would ask. "What are we being accused of?" He said, "Suspicious behavior." That word did all the work for him. Suspicious, no crime, no explanation, just a label you can stick on someone and suddenly everything else doesn't matter. I could feel my heart start to pound, not because I was scared yet, but because I knew exactly where this road usually leads. You know what I mean? We hadn't been late, we hadn't argued with anyone, we went through TSA like everyone else, shoes off bags, scanned polite nods. I'm an engineer. My wife runs a nonprofit. We saved for this trip, upgraded our seats so the kids wouldn't be split up. We were flying to Denver for a family reunion that had been on the calendar for almost a year. Nothing about us stood out except apparently us. I stayed seated. "Officer," I said, keeping my voice even, "we've done nothing wrong. If there's an issue, you can explain it here." That's when his tone shifted, not louder exactly, but sharper, colder. "If you don't comply, you'll be removed by force." I felt Talia move beside me. She pulled out her phone. "I'm recording this," she said. He snapped his head toward her. "Put the phone away." "No," she said, and I'll never forget how steady her voice sounded, even though I knew she was terrified. "Not until you explain why you're doing this." The cabin changed right then. That low hum of chatter disappeared. People stopped pretending not to notice. A guy across the aisle leaned forward. Someone behind us whispered, "What's going on?" I could feel eyes on us from every direction. The officer tapped his radio, and within minutes, 2 more airport police officers stepped onto the plane. 3 uniforms now filling the aisle, blocking us in. Phones came out everywhere. And let me tell you, when you see strangers pulling out their phones to record your life falling apart, it's surreal in a way that's hard to explain. I stood up slowly, hands visible. "We're not resisting," I said. "We're asking for an explanation." None came, just orders. The lead flight attendant, Claire, walked up from the front. She'd greeted us when we boarded. She knew we were calm, polite, normal. She asked the officers what the issue was. One of them whispered something to her. I saw her face tighten. She shook her head slightly and said I didn't observe anything concerning. They ignored her. One officer raised his voice so the whole cabin could hear. "This family is being removed pending investigation." That's when Noah started crying for real loud, panicked sobs. Kayla's eyes filled with tears and she grabbed my arm. That sound, my kid crying like that, flipped something in the cabin. You could feel it. People sat up straighter. Someone said, "Come on, man." Another voice said, "They didn't do anything." Then the cockpit door opened. Captain Elena Morales stepped out. Calm, composed, 25 years of experience in her posture alone. She took in the scene in about 2 seconds and asked one question. "What's the reason for removal?" "Security concerns," one officer said. She didn't budge. "What concerns?" "We can't disclose that." She looked at me, at my kids, at the phones pointed at us from every angle. "If you can't articulate a specific lawful reason, these passengers are not leaving my aircraft." I remember thinking for just a second, maybe this is where it stops. Maybe someone with authority is finally saying no. I was wrong. The senior officer stepped forward and said, "Captain, if you interfere, you can be detained as well." I swear the air left the cabin. Nobody spoke. That threat changed everything. It wasn't just about us anymore. People started murmuring louder this time. Someone laughed in disbelief. Someone else cursed under their breath. Claire looked like she might cry. A few minutes later, a supervisor boarded. Sergeant Paul Henson. Confident walk, relaxed shoulders, like he assumed he was walking into a misunderstanding that would be wrapped up in 2 minutes. He asked the captain to step aside. She refused, said everything could be discussed openly. Cameras were everywhere now, and you could see him register that. His expression shifted. He turned to me. "Sir, there's been a misunderstanding. If you just come with us, we'll clear this up." I shook my head. "We're not leaving unless we're under arrest and told what law we broke." That's when a woman from first class stood up and walked toward us. Middle-aged, calm professional. She handed Henson a business card. "My name is Laura Bennett," she said. "I'm a civil rights attorney. What you're doing is unlawful." She didn't yell. She didn't insult anyone. She explained probable cause, unlawful detention, constitutional rights, clearly and slowly like she was teaching a class. Every word landed. Henson glanced at the officers, at the captain, at the phones, at my kids clinging to their mother. He had a choice. And he made the wrong one. "Arrest him," he said. The cuffs came out so fast I barely processed it. Cold metal on my wrists. Kayla screamed. Noah completely lost it, sobbing so hard he couldn't breathe. Talia kept recording, her hands shaking now. "What is he being charged with?" she kept asking. No answer. Not one. Laura spoke clearly into her own phone. "This appears to be a false arrest." That's when Captain Morales turned back toward the cockpit and made a call that probably saved all of us. She contacted federal aviation authorities, requested immediate intervention, used words like unlawful detention and passenger safety. 15 minutes later, federal agents boarded the plane. They saw me in cuffs. They saw officers who couldn't explain why. They spoke to witnesses. They reviewed footage right there. And then quietly, efficiently, the cuffs came off. The airport police were escorted off the aircraft. Apologies were issued. The plane eventually took off almost 2 hours late. But the real fallout didn't happen on the ground. It happened in the air. Videos uploaded as soon as Wi-Fi allowed. Names shared. Clips went viral before we even landed. By the time we reached Denver, our phones wouldn't stop buzzing. Over the next year, investigations uncovered patterns. Complaints ignored. Text messages exposed. Careers ended. Policies rewritten. There was a settlement. Millions of dollars. Public apologies. Congressional hearings. People ask me all this time what the worst part was. It wasn't the cuffs. It wasn't the humiliation. It was watching my kids learn something about the world before they were ready. Watching my daughter realize that being well-behaved and doing everything right doesn't always protect you. Watching my son ask why the police were mad at us when we didn't do anything wrong. So here's what I want to know from you. When authority goes unchecked, who's responsible for stepping in? The captain, the passengers, the person brave enough to pull out a phone, and how many people stay silent because they're afraid it'll make things worse? Tell me what you think. Was this about safety or was it about power? Have you ever seen something like this happen? Maybe not on a plane, maybe somewhere else. Share your story in the comments. And if you believe these conversations matter, if you think telling these stories makes a difference,